Welcome to the podcast today. I'm Rabbi Rod, your congenial host, and I want to welcome my friend Stan Gardner. He's also a board member here at Covington Community Church.
Yes.
And recently, and I want to say it was last year, it was March and April of last year, we took a peace trip together, and that's kind of the subject of our program today. And it was absolutely fantastic. Stan, it's such a pleasure to have you on the program today.
Thank you very much.
Man.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Stan, maybe you want to talk to us a little bit about, what you did at Boeing. You're retired from Boeing now.
Yes. So I started my career at Boeing way back when as an electronic technician, and then went to school at night, got my engineering degree, and worked as an electrical engineer for about 10 years, and then actually left Boeing and went and worked for a modern-day orphanage down in Nevada, and lasted about 5 months in the heat in Nevada and had to come back. After that, I ended up going back to Boeing after getting a master's degree, again, working full-time and going to school at night, and in project management. And then I retired at Boeing after 15 years, additional years, as a project manager in Boeing's research and development. And in that job, we did factory automation projects.
Wow, that could be its own podcast because I imagine you worked on a lot of stuff that we're probably still seeing roll out. Wow.
Yes.
Stan, you have some pretty unusual hobbies too, and maybe you'll share a little bit about that with our audience because you have some great hobbies, brother.
So throughout my life, I've always kind of been interested in working with wood, and so I originally started off doing wood turning. We've got a few examples of some of the stuff I've done, and when I retired, I, due to medical reasons, couldn't handle standing at the lathe anymore, so I migrated to doing flat stuff, so primarily small carvings and charcuterie boards, cutting boards, that kind of thing. And over the years...
Wow, take a look at that. That is absolutely beautiful.
This is some of my high-end, more advanced recent work. This is a maple cutting board with a orange Osage and walnut inlay. So it's all in-grain, so all my inlays are also in-grain, so that when you cut on it, it's not as hard on the knife edge. But that one took me probably about 30 hours of labor in that one board.
That's incredible.
This is my other high-end board. This is again on maple with a walnut inlay and a bloodwood inlay for the flag. So most of my work is, I don't do the high-end very often, just because of the amount of material.
I want to roll back to that one because we're getting ready to celebrate 250 years. That's just incredible. Tree of Life, I mean, absolutely beautiful piece. And I would never put a knife to one of your cutting boards. But that is beautiful. And as we get ready to celebrate 250, that's just a beautiful piece.
Yes, on this one I actually did the inlay on the back side. So we didn't show the front side of it, but on the front side it's a regular cutting board with the juice groove on it, so you can cut on the front side and still have the design on the back. But the inlay itself is designed to be cut on.
Wow.
So it's about a 1/4 inch thick inlay.
Beautiful piece, absolutely beautiful.
This is flat grained versus the in-grained. So this is just a progression of my work as I've gone along.
So we're kind of going back in the past now, aren't we?
Yes, we're working backwards from where I'm at today to
Wow.
the way these boards have changed over the last 7 or 8 years. So we'll just...
Yeah, beautiful.
So this design, I actually have one of these in Israel and one in Spain, as well as here.
This was one of the pieces that we were able to present in Morocco, which we're going to talk about. We presented to our Israeli guide in Morocco, and it's beautiful, well well received by him. And I want to say the Space Needle and the Mountain, it is unique to our area.
Yes.
So if you know Seattle and you take something from Seattle, this is a beautiful piece.
Yes, this is actually an inlay. I've also done that same design with epoxy. And as I was migrating through there, most of the people that were selling these serving boards would just start off with no embellishment to it, and I felt that I had to come up with a niche. So I started doing little carvings on the board, not necessarily charging any extra for them, but just something to make them a little more unique. And on this was one that I carved little handhold, for lack of better terms, onto the
Wow.
edge of the board. Okay. And this is the
These are the peace coins.
this
and,
is the migration of the peace coins. The ones on the right side here were a request by the church here to. It's got the church's emblem on one side, which is the C with the two circles around it, and then just a variety of the backside of what I did for the church. And I've probably made a couple thousand of these for the church.
Wow. So I'm looking at the top one, and that was one of the original Israeli ones that we did, because we did a couple of trips to Israel, to Palestine, to Jordan, and the Seed of Life. Go ahead.
Yeah, these also went to Nigeria. So
Nigeria. So they've been. I took these coins to South Africa when I was in South Africa after our trip. But
Yeah.
they're in probably, I'd say, between 12 and 15 countries.
yeah, I think total we've figured out that we've got them in about 20 countries,
About 20 countries
all
now.
across the United States, as far north as Northern Ireland, as far south as South Africa. Don't know if we've gotten any further east than Israel, but all across the Mediterranean.
Wow. I want to
So-
say South Africa, the next continent down below is Antarctica. So we've got to find a way to get a coin to Antarctica.
Yes.
I want to mention, just some of the things here, like the Seed of Life. That was one of our coins. And the Seed of Life, we're going to talk about the peace trip some, but just kind of breaking into that. The Seed of Life was one of those things. It's sacred geometry, but it's ancient. But it's one of those things that connects really the Abrahamic faiths, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. But you find it in architecture everywhere, and it may have been a symbol in the top of the temple.
Oh.
And probably the second temple, and definitely in the second temple, because we see reliefs of it on different architecture. We know that was probably at the top of the temple, maybe even in the Holy of Holies or in the holy place. So,
And we did see this symbol throughout the mosaics in Morocco when we were there. We actually
incredible.
saw it in an old ancient ruins, and
I've got some pictures of Volabilis, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Of us together there.
so that's kind of where this design came from. I hadn't been exposed to it before going to Morocco, so when Rabbi Rod pointed it out while we were touring around Morocco, I thought, oh, that's a beautiful design.
The Seed of Life is really one of those unique pieces that it really comes from Genesis, so it's scriptural for all three faith groups. And on the peace trip, you really want something that connects, but it comes from 7 days of creation.
Oh.
That time and eternity, and I want to say that's an incredible piece. It really does connect in so many ways.
So the next slide will have those coins. So go ahead to the next slide.
We could do a full thing on the Seed of Life as well.
Yes.
Oh yeah, excellent.
So these are examples of the coins. I just made up a board of the different designs that we took to Morocco. So these four that are the darker ones, we put a dove on one side, and then the four languages that were spoken in Morocco are Arabic, Hebrew, French, and Spanish. So they all say peace in those four languages. And so that made it special for the Morocco trip. These were done specifically for the Morocco trip. And then on the far right, that group that's in Arabic, English, and Hebrew, and that says health. And those are going to Israel on a trip in 2026. And so we'll be taking those there, distributing among the West Bank, Jordan, wherever Rabbi Rod and the group tours at that point. So they'll be spread even more widely in the Middle East.
Wow. So we're really praying for the peace for this next trip.
Yes.
Wow.
And with all that's gone on there, instead of just putting peace again on there, we decided to put healing on there because that part of the world really needs a lot of healing right now.
Yeah, peace is I want to say it's become more of a political term
Yes.
than a reality. And so, yeah, when politicians, when they hand you a peace dove, it usually comes with a stick. But, not getting too political, but yeah, the peace that we practice is completely different.
Yes.
And we'll kind of get into that as we get into Morocco. But yeah, the peace that we really talk about is, maybe from Matthew 5:9. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." And so the kind of peace that we carry is now it's a government of a different kind, a government
Yes.
from a different world coming to this one.
And it's given freely, not expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
And that's what made the trip to Morocco so meaningful.
That really was an excellent trip. And this wasn't your first peace trip, was it?
The first official peace trip, I've always been a peacemaker, even as a child. Good listener, willing to hear other points of view. And actually, my first exposure to another culture was when I was in the military. And I was stationed in Germany. And we were exposed to the culture of Germany, all the old castles, which I grew up in Wyoming and Colorado, and there was nothing even close to it in Colorado or Wyoming or anywhere else that we'd been here in the United States. And so just that exposure to that different culture, I just found absolutely fascinating. And that was right out of high school, so that really planted the seed that there was more to the world than just the United States.
It's amazing once you get outside of the continental U.S. and you really start to experience other cultures, other pieces of their life. It's amazing how it affects your own and how you want to connect with that. And connecting and peace, they go hand in hand.
Right.
And if you're able to kind of suspend your own cultural ideas for a moment and take a look from another lens, from another culture's, a set of eyes or from their experience and their history, it really does establish peace. And they're so grateful once that you either try to speak their language, eat their food, sleep in their country. They're really excited that you came to see them, to experience some of their culture. It's just an amazing thing.
Yes. And we, because of that experience being in the military overseas, we actually had exchange students from Germany, from Sweden, and from Denmark. So the kids grew up with that international flavor and that exposure to that. And some of our dearest friends were exchange students through high school and had their formative years in high school here, and that set them up for their careers.
They say that service members make the best peacekeepers and the best peacemakers because they know the absence of what peace is. And oftentimes it's more than just the absence of war that is peace, but it's that peace of mind that goes with it too, that sense of well-being. But, maybe you might want to describe what it's like to be kind of on the opposite end of somebody who was a person of uniform and whose experiences globally started out as a representative of maybe the American military to maybe taking a peace trip and really experience other cultures in a totally different way.
Well, one of my earliest remembrances of time in Germany, there were still a lot of World War II veterans in Germany, at the time. And we were living off base, taking public transportation. And of course, we were in uniform at the time. And it was not the most positive, although I didn't speak a lot of German. I could tell from the conversation and the tone that his comments were not necessarily complimentary.
Wow.
I didn't find that to be the case for the German people that were, say, under 30. We were part of a German-American friendship club, and we were allowed to check out the staff cars on weekends, and we'd travel around, and the local German contingent of this club would act as our tour guide, so they would explain to us as we attempted to speak a little bit of German. But we would travel around in these great big late 1970s Chevelles that caused the gas shortage back in the 70s. So that we had a lot of pictures of the cars taken in these old ancient ruins, towns where they weren't built for much more than horses, and you'd get these great big Army OD green staff cars in there. So we had a lot of pictures taken of just the fact that we had these great big cars in these little German towns. So it was quite an enlightening experience to have that introduction to culture.
It's amazing because on this Moroccan peace trip that we took together, and that was really our first peace trip together,
Yes.
we discovered that we were stationed at exactly the same place, just a few years apart.
Right.
And we were also members of the Nellingen community. I want to say it's sort of a peace community, but it was an exchange and a friendship, a fellowship community, and we were both a part of that, and our wives were too. And
Yes.
it's hard to believe that we actually were stationed in the same place. And I think you had already been reassigned at that time.
Yes. I was there in
when I got there.
late 70s to about, I came back to the States in about 78.
Okay.
And yes, Nellingen was a little tiny town outside of Stuttgart.
Yeah.
But that's where I really was exposed to a foreign culture, and it had a lifelong impact.
Wow. So cool. And we didn't discover that until we were together having coffee. I have a
Right.
picture of that in our slide deck as we start to look at Morocco. Well, let's kind of deep dive in Morocco.
Okay.
And really talk about the peace trip. And just to kind of set it up, a few 8 years ago, I went on my first peace trip. And I've done many trips to the Middle East. And one of the reasons why we felt the peace trip was important, once we learned what it was, what we were actually doing, and then experimenting both in peace dialogue, I questioned, how did I ever not get involved in peace? And, why, when it comes to serving, the Lord, the Messiah, how did I not do those kind of trips before? And it's funny how peace kind of dawns on you in that way. But 8 years ago, I was invited by a local pastor to take a trip to basically Palestine and Israel. And again, this was 8 years ago. This is all before October 7th. And so I was invited to go, and I went with one of my brothers, Steve Murray. It was our first peace trip. He was the former senior pastor of Real Life here in our community. And so I'd lived in Jerusalem, and I'd been to Israel many times, and fought a war in the Middle East, and had many experiences there, warfare in the Middle East. And I'll just keep that brief. And so I'd had my time already, years of time in the Middle East. And
Right.
so we were invited on this trip by Keith Carpenter. We were like, wow, okay, let's go. And we were kind of guests of this trip. But, and I felt like we were flies on the wall. And for Steve, I think I was his unofficial guide. But having been there before. But when we went, what we discovered was that peace it's essential.
Mhm.
Peace is as essential as air is to our lungs. And you can't build without it. You can't live really without a sense of peace or well-being. Anything else brings conflict, trauma. Um, it's brutal. Life without peace is just a brutal reality. And so, what we were learning was a dialogue um, that creates relationship. And we were learning this dialogue of peace from Palestinians and also from Israelis.
Hmm.
That there were people that were tired of fighting wars. They were tired of fighting each other and seeing the death and mayhem that resulted. And so what they decided was to listen to the story of the other and to accept it and realize that maybe there's a burden that I have to bear in hearing that story, but I can hear the story, not judge it, listen to it, accept the parts that are difficult for me, and then go on and hear the story. Hopefully, by hearing the dialogue and the story of the other, create a relationship,
Right.
you
And
know,
I
which creates peace.
and I also think that it's very important just to be willing to listen. Most people
Willing
don't
to
even
listen.
listen without jumping in and putting your 2 cents worth. It's very important to let people explain where they're coming from and their experiences, which are totally different than mine. But that's okay. It's okay to have different experiences and to have a cultural background that's different. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's necessarily dangerous. Um, what I found it wasn't my first trip to Morocco. We actually have some friends that live in Spain, and their son lived in Morocco and has married a Moroccan woman, and they live in Morocco. And so that was our first connection on there.
Wow.
And just the exposure to the Medina, which is the closest equivalent here would be kind of a outdoor fair, like the Puyallup Fair type
Yeah,
setup.
exactly.
That's but that's how they do their day-to-day shopping. It's their mall. Everything that's purchased by the people in the towns, they go to the Medina and do their shopping. And this is a picture of the textile section of one of the Medinas that we were in. Very vibrant colors there. That kind of surprised me. I expected to see much more muted colors. I hadn't been exposed a lot to the uh, the Muslim world and all that, and so that to me was a little bit surprising.
Yeah. This was a really cool picture, and one of the people in this picture, I don't know if it comes out for our audience, but he's in Morocco again right now, and he was our peace guide. That's Alad,
Yes.
and he's part of Mejdi, which is a peace group. And it's funny that on this trip, I learned about peace dialogue and from a model from from Ireland, North Ireland, that they have a beautiful peace model, which, you know, bloody North Ireland. I think that's how many of us remember it from the
Right.
70s. But the peace model of the North Ireland is becoming part of a dialogue of peace, because peace takes a while to establish. People have to trust each other.
Right.
Relationships have to be built, and it goes far beyond government, the government's extent for peace. But North Ireland was a model, and on our Morocco trip, we actually discussed that. And there were several people, and Mejdi also went to North Ireland to discuss peace with Protestants and Catholics there on the ground. And I thought that was fascinating, you know, in the peace dialogue. And we can roll back to our footage.
It was also interesting. That's Northern Ireland. When we were in one of the synagogues, they were describing the structure of the synagogue and what all the different symbols and different things around the synagogue were. And there was a couple from Northern Ireland that was standing in the background kind of listening. And so I went over and talked to them and explained that we were there on a peace mission, that we were there to dialogue with the local Moroccans, both of Muslim faith and Jewish faith, and that we were being explained because most of us were not from a Jewish background. Most of us were either non-believers or Protestant religions.
Yeah.
And so most of us had never been in a synagogue before or had any idea of any significance.
Let alone
of
in the
them.
Middle East.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that they were there in the background, and really there are no coincidences. God wanted them there for a reason,
Yeah.
and that's how one of my coins from there got into Northern Ireland, is they just happened to be standing in the background. And
Wow.
I'm not normally known for going up and talking to strangers, but the Morocco trip definitely brought out a side of me that I didn't know I had.
Wow. A peace
So,
side. It's so
yes.
funny because we come from warrior backgrounds. And so peace it's refreshing.
Yes.
It just never dawned on me. And as Americans being in the Middle East, and we're sort of out of our culture a couple of times over, it was amazing to be there for peace. Mike, Miracle Mike, if you want to flip back to maybe some of our Morocco pictures. And this is kind of us. This was our crew. I want to say we're peacefully riding in a Mercedes van.
We spend a lot of miles on those.
Yeah. The guy here, Alad, who is now in Morocco on another peace trip, and he's Israeli, and his family's originally from Morocco, and so it was kind of like a homecoming for him in many ways. Of course, our driver, which can't be seen in this picture, he's from Morocco.
Yes.
And quite Islamic. And so, I mean, you have three faiths that are here, and some of the people in this group are some of them from here and people that we travel with on the peace tours. And some of them are from really across the country. And
Yes. The gentleman on the farthest back was from Ohio.
Yeah.
The rest of them were in that picture, were from Washington State.
Yeah.
And these were after we had gone out to the Sahara, because you can kind of tell by the headdress. We didn't have that before we went out there and
Yeah.
experienced the sand for the first time.
What do you think about the food? How'd you like it?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
So much so that I brought back about a pound of the spice. That it was the first time that I'd ever had cinnamon used as a main condiment or a spice in fixing meat.
Yeah.
And that's just
It's unusual.
it's very savory, not spicy hot, but very savory and sweet.
Dave Knight, of course, who was on our trip, and him and I, this is his wife Anita, him and I just did a trip about 5 months ago, right a week after the ceasefire, the Israeli-Gaza ceasefire. We were in Israel, landed in Jordan, and we were in Israel together for about 8 days. So we're gone about 2 weeks on this trip. But Morocco actually gave me hope, maybe for the healing trips and some of the other things, because healing is such a huge piece
Right.
of the peace dialogue, that people would be, feel whole and healed. And I want to say, in my experience just recently in Israel, it wasn't peace, the words that people wanted to hear. They wanted to see it, but
Right.
they really needed the healing from the traumas of war, which are still active right now.
And what I found really kind of exciting about Morocco specifically is throughout history, the Jewish population have been very much ingrained in their culture.
Yeah.
And to the point where even though it's been Muslim rulers for centuries, they brought the Jewish people around their palaces and their official buildings to kind of protect them. And in the 50s, there was a big migration. In the 60s, there was a big migration of the Moroccan Jewish people into Israel. and it's still felt to this day. There's almost like a critical part of their heritage has been taken away from them. It's kind of the view that I got from the local Moroccans. They still think that highly of the Jewish people, which was very unusual for a Muslim country.
Yes, very unusual. And Morocco, it has a deep peace history, but it has a deep multicultural history as well because it's right there at the tip of North Africa. And we'll see some of that in the archaeology, but it's right there at the northern tip. It was the far reaches of the Roman Empire, even way back when. But for them to lament people that had left when
Right.
when Israelis, basically, when the Jews of Morocco went back to Israel, during the early parts of the Zionist movement, back in the 50s and 60s, they left, and it left a hole in the culture
Right.
of Morocco. And for the Moroccans in unison to say, wow, we miss the Jews, we miss a piece of our culture.
Right.
That was really kind of a big deal, and it gave me hope, actually.
Yeah, one of
For peace.
the places that one of our Moroccan guide stopped in at was a community fireplace, and the gentleman that was manning the fireplace, all the people make all their food, and it's kind of like in a crock pot, but they bring it into this community fire, and his job is to tend the fire
Hygiene,
and
yeah.
cook their food for them. And his history is he was brought into Morocco as a slave, or his ancestors were, and they escaped and settled in Morocco. But he said originally Morocco was the gateway from Africa for the slave trade into Northern Europe, or into Europe through Spain and the rest of Europe.
It's funny, we could have spent a whole tour just looking at that and looking at making peace between people who were former slaves and people who had been free. And the other thing that was kind of interesting about the history of Morocco is it has a deep Christian history. And although we looked at Islamic history and Jewish history of the past and recent 20th century, the deep Christian history goes all the way back to really biblical times. And some of the original popes of the church, like Augustine, he was also in Morocco, Algeria, and Egypt. I want to say one of the second bishops of the church, second or third bishop of the church, was from that area himself. There's a deep Christian history that's there. All three faiths, you can see their influence.
Right.
I want to say one more thing kind of about that. I learned something that was interesting culturally, because every culture's got something baked in, so to speak, something that's there. And that was the sacrifice of the lamb for the firstborn children, and it's not just the firstborn, but every child that's born, a lamb is sacrificed for that child. It's a cultural thing. And it goes, they tell the story from Egypt. So it goes all the way back to the Passover when the blood of the lamb, I want to say as I listen to the story, it goes all the way back to the blood of the lamb. But how those stories traveled and how they became interpreted later. But in modern Morocco, every child that's born has a lamb dinner at their birth. And the blood, basically, it's a sacrificial dinner, but it redeems the child. And I want to say it's an amazing thing. You don't see it in Islam, but you see it culturally. It permeates the culture. And I thought that was really cool. Not only is it deeply Jewish, deeply Christian, but it's also deeply Moroccan.
Well, and we were there during Ramadan, and there was a shortage of lambs in Morocco, so the king basically gave the population a get out of jail card, for lack of better terms,
Yeah.
because there was not enough lambs
Yeah.
to supply the need. So he
Yeah.
took it upon himself for the good of the Moroccan people to sacrifice a lamb on behalf of it, and not have everybody trying to do that for their own families. And you could tell there was still like something was missing from their celebrations, but it was also terribly humbling to be invited into a home of a local Moroccan family that fed us. Was like a 10-course meal.
We're going to see some of those pictures. Mike, if you want to flip back to that. Oh, thank you, Miracle Mike. This is our closing dinner, actually.
Yes.
This is at the tail end of Ramadan. The gentleman here is one of our guides, Moroccan. And so it's at the close of Ramadan, and so he should be celebrating with his family. And so they had a dinner upstairs in the restaurant that we were in. And I think, is this Rabat or Casablanca?
This would have been Casablanca.
Casablanca, which, of course, the film had made it famous. But it's funny, he goes up there, he has dinner with his family, then he comes back down and joins us. And he said something that just, it made me smile when he said it. He said, well, I'm a little bit Muslim. And then he comes down and he joins us. And here's a table of Jews and Christians at the same table, and Islam, in
Yes.
fellowship. And I would say it was incredible. We shared desserts together, we shared stories, and this is at the tail end of this peace trip, but it built a kind of bond that was really unique. And
Yes, our Muslim guides were very respectful when we would get into different areas. They would actually step back, and if we were talking to a Jewish rabbi there, they would step out of the room so that the whoever we were speaking with felt free. We also noticed that we spoke to a couple female journalists in Morocco, and the same thing. They had no problem discussing anything that you wanted to bring up, from women's rights to anything else. But our guides would actually leave the room so that whoever we were speaking with felt free to share whatever was on their heart, and we could ask whatever questions. And again, being Westerners, not knowing what's politically correct, some of the questions they asked probably were not necessarily appropriate, but they handle it with such grace,
yeah,
that it was just really humbling.
it was very respectful. And
Yes.
I have to admire the Moroccans and their hospitality. But again, Morocco gave me hope for peace
Yes.
across the Middle East. And for Dave and I to do our next journey, it really made it possible for us to think about, what does it mean when you bring peace to an area of conflict? And they have their own conflicts that are there, especially between Morocco and Algeria.
Yes.
I mean, they have their own struggles and conflicts. And so listening to the story of the other, it helps us tell our story. And I think those kind of stories, when we bring them back to our own culture, it gives us a little bit of hope in that too.
Yes, we could learn a lot from Morocco, just with how, even though they've got disparate religious beliefs, they've somehow figured out how to get along
Yeah, absolutely.
and thrive.
Let's take a look at our next. Thanks, Mike. Oh yeah, this is great. It almost looks like you're wearing a hat, but that's I think part of the adornment there in the shop.
Yes. This is when we were doing some shopping for you.
Thanks.
That's Anita Knight. She was our negotiator. So I'm not used to being in a culture where you haggle for things, and so whatever price they would name, I was willing to pay because I had no idea. But she was our haggler, and she made our excess funds go as far as they possibly could.
For the Knights, this was about our third trip together.
Yes.
And we've traveled throughout the Middle East and through different peace trips quite a bit. And I think for Dave and I, it's our third or fourth peace trip. This last one, of course, was pretty tough. Just right at the end of the ceasefire, right at the beginning of it, actually, within the first week.
Yeah, and you were still there when there were still some bombs going off.
Yeah.
So, okay.
We can. Oh, there we are. And is this Rabat or?
This kind of looks like the, let's see, the first place we flew into, yeah, that was Rabat. So this looks like it was close to the what they call wasn't a hotel, but that's what the equivalent in the U.S. is.
Yeah.
But it's the place that we stayed, and a lot of the hotels over there were old family homes or banks, and they have converted them into basically guest houses, I guess is the best way to explain them.
It's I think it is Casablanca. Maybe it's Rabat. It's Marrakesh. Marrakesh. Google tried to film the roads
Yes.
and streets of Marrakesh, and after 2 years, they just gave up because it's impossible to in the Medinas. It's impossible to get the road work done. So Google Maps, it couldn't give you a good map
Right.
of Marrakesh, and I thought that was really cool. And when you look at some of those streets, you've literally got to turn sideways in order to walk through them.
Yes, and the other thing that was really interesting about the Medinas is they would have the different industries in different sections in the Medina.
Yeah.
And so all the vendors would go from the artisans that were in the either the metal section or the wood section or the weaving section, and they would buy their products from those artisans to take out into the vending area of the Medina to sell.
Yeah.
And it was just not something that you would see here.
I see this entrance here to this area, and we're going to a shop area through there. The biblical definition of the eye of the needle, it just reminds me of that. But that was such a great shot and a great day, really a great day for peace. It really was. Yeah, Mike, if you want to roll to our next one. Peace dove, and I shot this picture, and it took a little bit to get the right dove spot, but we're actually in an Islamic school, an ancient
Yes.
Islamic school, when I shot this, and I thought it was kind of interesting. A place of peace, you could feel it. A lot of prayer went up there, but peace. And I want to say peace between the three Abrahamic faiths. And I look at our world today, and from a religious standpoint, you've got three faiths that are looking for the return of their messiahs and their version of Messiah.
Right.
Christianity with the return of Jesus, Judaism, the return of the Son of David, and then Islam, maybe, and especially in Iran, the return of the Mahdi. And all of them are at the same time. I don't think I've ever spent a time in history where all of them are looking for not just peace, but their version of peace, and the return of a Messiah figure. So, peace, it's elusive, but it's real. And maybe you want to speak to this, Stan.
So this was a typical courtyard. The interesting thing is all of the scroll work that's on the walls, that's plaster of Paris, and it's carved in place.
You're going to know this well.
Yes.
There's also wood that's carved in there.
Yes, but I don't remember exactly what it says, but all the way around in the middle, that border, it's a verse out of the Quran, I believe, that goes all the way around all this. But the artisans on that learn 2 or 3 patterns in their lifetime, just like their mosaics.
Wow.
And they specialized in that. So where you see a different change on that, that's a different artisan that's working on that part of the building.
This is also the same place where I shot the dove in the
Yes.
sky, and you can see a piece of that. But
So on this one, they taught everything from religion to mathematics, medicine. Everything was taught in this same building.
what do we got next, Mike? So this is where we had coffee, and this is where well, that's still the peace dove. This is where we had coffee, and this is where we discovered that we were stationed in Germany together, just
Yes.
years apart. I would say that was eye-opening. That we just had a pause, and we could talk about where we'd been.
Yeah, this was at a botanical garden in a little restaurant
Yeah.
there in the botanical garden. And I'm not even sure how the conversation come up, but
Yeah.
it was amazing that even though there were decades apart, just randomly to find somebody that was stationed in the same place I was just
Yeah.
really mind-boggling.
Yeah. And we're on the same peace trip.
Yes.
Two former warriors learning about peace in another culture.
Yes.
That was a great time.
This was a sign that
Dar es Salaam,
this
which means
was
house of peace.
okay. I was going to say it
Yeah.
had something to do with peace, but this was just we were walking down the
I
street
had to
and saw
crack out
this.
my informal, Arabic.
Yes.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great shot too, and that wasn't too far from where we stayed. I'll set this up a little bit, and then you can talk about it. This is Volubilis. This is a Roman ruin. It's at the far reaches of the Roman Empire because it kind of hugged the coast of North Africa, and so there's some funny things that happened here. But this was one of the structures that also had the seat of life on it, which was amazing. And I don't think you can see it in this, but the seat of life is actually on this structure, and it's Roman. So it's neither
Right.
Christian, Jewish, or Islamic, but here it is, the seat of life on a Roman structure that's probably well over 2,000 years old.
Yes. And the household or the house where I guess he'd be the governor. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but the leader of the military that was on here, his house was 17,000 square feet, and in there he had a koi pond, and in that koi pond, in the mosaics, there were several seat of life emblems in there,
Wow.
and that's where I saw the first design that I brought back here to incorporate into these peace coins.
Wow.
Was seeing it in basically this form.
It's funny, you've got to go to Morocco all the way to a Roman ruin to find a design.
Yes.
So you might remember when this happened, but something kind of crazy happened on this piece of our tour. And so a group of Italian women, had come up in our tour group, and they were listening to Alad teach us about the area and the peace and what life was like there over 2,000 years ago in the Roman Empire.
Right.
And basically, Rome, they built places that were comfortable for them. So wine, olive oil, theater, music, all of that. They lived the good life, while the culture around them basically served them.
Right.
So they became the microwave ovens and the Uber Eats and all the other stuff. They did all the work. So the cultures that hosted the Romans, and I want to say, I'm saying that in the most politest of terms.
Yes.
It's kind of interesting, to look at that. So we're learning about kind of the brutality of the history of the Romans and the Roman Empire in Morocco. So you have Americans there, and we're right in the middle of our own conflicts that are going on. And a lot of people see America still as colonizers. And then you have the Israelis that are there, and they're fighting, their own war against terrorism against the Palestinians at that time. So that's what's happening there. So you have three groups of people, the Romans, the Americans, and the Israelis, all in the same place. All of them seen as former colonizers or current ones. And Alad says, how does it feel to be an ancient colonizer? I want to say it got dead quiet.
Yes.
Then when they asked, where are you from? And he said, Israel. It got even quieter still. And then after the moment passed, we all chuckled, realizing that we can all be viewed in a negative way, regardless of the circumstances. But here all three of us are in search of peace.
And during that conversation, he happened to ask them if they considered themselves Romans. And of course, they all said, oh, no, we're not Romans. But they all identify with the advancements that Rome made, but they don't
Yeah.
consider themselves being from the same stock as the Romans.
Yeah.
And after that, the conversation just opened up, and
It opened up.
when he was talking about some of the history of Rome in there, some of the Italian ladies were also putting in their 2 cents worth
Yeah.
from their perspective, and
Yeah.
so it was really a nice cultural interchange there.
It really was, and a practice in the peace dialogue.
And on this, the this was built on top of the hill. You can kind of see all the farmland and vineyards, but all of the olive trees and wine vineyards and all that were down in the valleys, and they had basically slaves that were working the fields for the military that were on there. So as we were walking down the hill, I met that same group of ladies from Italy, and offered to give them some coins. And first they were very hesitant, expecting that I was asking for money or something. And when I said, "Oh no, this is just something I made to bring along, just to spread the message," and
Yeah.
they kind of looked at him, and then one took them, and pretty soon I had given out 20 of them.
Yeah. Amazing.
And it was just the fact that they almost couldn't believe that somebody was giving something that they had spent their hard time and money on for nothing. And I thought, well, that's what they're for.
Yeah.
I also had the same reaction from the others on the tour when I said, I made up plenty of these. Please take them and hand them out, because I can't give all these out there. It's not about me. It's about the mission here, and this is just something to remind people that we're not all warmongers, or we're all out here trying to live our lives and express peace the best way we know how. And for me, that happened to be these coins.
I think people find it remarkable that you're actually there for peace.
Yes.
And so you're sort of a tourist, but not really. Your mission underneath it is really for peace. And it's funny that not only Americans can have that dialogue, but Christians as well. And people want to engage. They want to know your view. They want to know your story as much as you want to know them. That was an amazing thing I think we all felt it on this trip.
Yeah, there were so many miracles that we started kind of keeping a running track day by day. We lost track over time of
Miracle Monday
all
was every day.
the things that were happening that were unexplained, that were just truly miracles. When we were headed out to Sahara, we got to the airport, and we were supposed to have 11 o'clock flight, and we were there at like 9 o'clock, and they said, "Oh, well, we had a time change here in Morocco, and your flight's been canceled," without anybody telling us.
Yeah.
And then we go into the little cafeteria there,
Yeah.
and the whole cafeteria has people spread all over, all dejected, because everybody that was in the cafeteria at that time had the same problem. Their flights were canceled. So they had canceled like 4 or 5 different flights that night. And so we actually went around and started talking to people and just starting up conversation. And I think our calm demeanor brought down the overall stress level, everybody in there. And somehow another miracle, they arranged traffic or transportation at 1 o'clock in the morning to get us from the airport out to the Sahara where we were going to be. We drove all night, slept on the bus on the way out there, and it was just amazing. It was almost to the point where it felt like they were rolling in the sidewalks, and then transportation was arranged.
Man. That was an incredible time. It could have been extremely discouraging, but I think we brought a little bit of hope and peace to that. We're already coming to the close of our time. We've already been talking about this for an hour, but I wanted to ask you, what do you think changed about you on the peace trip? What do you think was the biggest change or your takeaway?
I think the biggest takeaway, because I've always been kind of more of a peacemaker all my life. I've never been comfortable in conflict, but just the way people reacted when they realized that I just want to hear their story, that I wasn't looking for something, that I wasn't there to judge them, that I was genuinely interested in where they were coming from and what their experience was. And for me, that peace mission really brought that home, that the best way that we can make peace both here locally or abroad is just be willing to listen. Just be open.
That's excellent. That's a great takeaway. So how have you been able to incorporate maybe some of this since the peace trip in your day-to-day?
Well, I think a lot of it comes back to sharing the gift that God has given me in my woodworking. Um, I've done over the years. Most of my work has gone to support a variety of charities and fundraisers. So just donating products. So the peace coins and the coins for the church were definitely part of that wanting to share God's talent with the world.
It's funny because I felt like I really only got to ask you two questions, but I want to say that in relationship to the peace coins, it really became phenomenal. Everybody that really took a peace coin, they were really hopeful for peace, and they had an expectation about what peace would look like, and it was funny because we don't think about it as being something tangible or something that we can exchange, and the coin really kind of does that. And I think
Right.
you're the only person that I know that has really developed a type of peace coin. And how does that experience, how does that kind of change the way you look at peace and the way you look at giving, because it's something that you give?
I've really not thought about it much. I just enjoy the creative
That was a
aspect.
crazy question, by the way.
Yeah. I enjoy the creative aspect, and I enjoy sharing with the thought that someone else may get some joy out of something that I might make. It's really less about me and more about how can I encourage someone else.
The joy that people have in receiving those coins, and they've really gone all over. And when I was at the graduation for Adult Teen Challenge, I was getting ready to speak on behalf of one of the graduates that was graduating from the program after a year of discipleship. And I looked on the desk, and there was a coin that you had made with the seed of life on it.
Oh, wow.
It was life. It was a person who's now going to be living life and living life for other people. And I thought that was interesting. There
Yes.
it was, right on the desk.
And I am looking to work more with the Adult Teen Challenge to share some of my expertise and some gifts with them to help these young men that are struggling with addictions to maybe find something that they can turn to that is creative, that helps them focus on something other than where they're at. So,
Stan, it was such a pleasure to travel with you on the peace trip.
Yes.
I'm just going to shake your hand and know that we have other peace endeavors coming up. And
yes.
man, we could have talked about this for another hour or more just on Morocco, and just the joy that it brought to so many people there, but the stuff we were able to bring back. Stan, such
Yes.
a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Man, such a pleasure. Well, that pretty much closes our podcast today. And peace is a beautiful thing, and the world so lacks it. And we serve a leader, a savior that is all about peace. Blessed are the peacemakers. And you are a blessed man, and we've been blessed to know you. And at least 20 countries and numerous individuals have
Yes.
been blessed by your peace endeavors. If you like this kind of content and this kind of a podcast, a little peaceful today, and like, share, subscribe. God bless you, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for being our audience in peace today.